mitigate the risk so that those things don't come up again. And then we have the planning, which is clause 6. And in planning, you now address those risks, sorry, we spoke about planning. Now support. After context, leadership, planning, then the support. So we've identified the risks, we've gone through the risk management process. Then in the support phase, you allocate resources and you ensure that there's staff awareness and the competence of the staff is in place. You know that you're not putting a square peg in a round hole, that the person that is meant to handle A is handling A because he has the skill and the expertise to handle A. Then we have clause 8, which is operation. So in clause 8, that's where you implement and manage the ISMS processes. So this is where we put the processes into action. So like I said, because this is just an overview, we can't go deep into it. Just as a side note, note that at Standards and Best Practice, we have courses that go from the foundation to the champions course, to the lead auditor, to the lead implementer course. So in case, which I believe a lot of us want to go more in depth, we need to look into those courses, and I'm sure we'll be directed on how to go about it at the end of this session. So yes, the operation is where we'll implement and manage our ISMS processes. Then clause 9 is where you evaluate the performance. You monitor, you measure, and then you audit. So when you monitor, then you measure, and then you audit. Now that tells us, so how is it performing? How would you know that your ISMS is performing? You have to measure. You look at the indices. Over time, have things gotten better? Over time, have things gotten worse? So when you measure by the indices with which you come up with, then you audit, and then where there needs to be improvement, that brings us to clause 10, which is continual improvement, where we need to continuously improve on the ISMS. So during the audit, during the evaluation, during the reviews, we would identify opportunities for improvement. And when we identify the opportunities for improvement, we implement those improvements that we have identified. So we spoke about the Annex A controls, and I said we have 93 controls. We have 93 controls. Now, these controls are segmented into 4 themes or 4 categories. We have the organization controls, which are 37 controls. We have the people controls, 8 controls. We have physical controls, 14 controls. We have technological controls, 34 controls. When you add them up, they cumulate to 93 controls. Now, when you are implementing the ISO 27001, you have to go through each and every one of these controls, and then you have to identify which is applicable and which is not applicable to that implementation. Now, it's not just identifying which is applicable or not applicable. There must be a justification to why it is applicable or why it is not applicable. So it's not a box that you just tick, and tick. No. Why is this applicable and why is this not applicable? Again, for more in-depth into, or for more depth into this, you could pick a course and that would show us the depth. But this is the core of our implementation, these controls. So we have some mandatory documents, mandatory records. So for instance, I'll just show some here. When we talk about mandatory documentation, things like the scope of the ISMS, which comes from clause 4.3. Now you can see that in clause 4.3, there we get the requirements of the scope for the ISM. Don't forget that we said 4 Clause 4 is the context of the organization. But how would you know, in knowing the context of an organization,